All right, welcome to the podcast. I am hanging out with my friend Peter Keith, maybe one of the most creative people that I know. So perfect to have you on the podcast. How you doing today?
Thanks for the kind words. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, we were just chatting about the weather and how we have to enjoy these days because while we have beautiful summers, we have short summers. So every day counts, right?
Weather, the start of all great conversations. Let's just stick
Absolutely.
to the important stuff. No, it's always such a pleasure to chat with you and to be on your podcast and lots of new things to discuss.
Yeah, no kidding. So I don't know if I should describe you as a serial entrepreneur, but a couple of things that you've created, co-founded. So Meuwly's, charcuterie cart, Beb's Bagels, the hub. What am I missing?
Yeah, those are the entrepreneurial projects, and I also have a day job, so I'm here at the office today. I'm the director of the University of Alberta's Entrepreneurship Center. So I'm kind of in that startup mindset all day, whether it's coaching entrepreneurs here, and then working on my own projects in the evening and weekends. So yeah, lots going on for sure.
Awesome. Well, I want to chat about some of your projects because I feel on some level they're kind of converging in unique ways, which is always fun. Um, Meuwly's. So we met through Meuwly's years ago now. We do projects out at Jasper the odd time. Hopefully, we'll be invited back one of these days when everything settles down. But let's talk about Meuwly's just maybe as the origin for the context of the conversation. What is Meuwly's? How did it kind of start, and how did it evolve?
Well, we'll go all the way back to when I was 14 and was dead set on working in a restaurant. So managed to convince the local Boston Pizza to hire me as a dishwasher. Worked my way up to being a line cook. I worked at fine dining restaurants around Edmonton and Vancouver. But all through that journey, about 10 years of working in restaurants, I started to realize like I want to do something in this industry, but I don't know if I want to own a restaurant. Sounds pretty rough. It's a lot of work. You don't have much free time with your friends and family, a lot of stress, very little pay. So I started to think, I don't ever want to own a restaurant. We'll hold that thought for, for later conversation. But I started to look for other opportunities in the food industry that would allow me to be creative and entrepreneurial and build something cool for our community. And we landed on Meuwly's, which started out as a cured meat company. We built a small batch food manufacturing facility right in the core of Edmonton to do specialty salumi and smoked meats and different deli products, mustards, pickles, all of that. That led to the creation of a storefront, which we opened almost exactly 7 years ago. It was the beginning of July 2018. We had a charcuterie subscription box. We had all kinds of things going there. Through that journey, I started to realize that a lot of my passion was, not just about food and cooking, but was actually about creating and, about hospitality and taking care of people and solving people's problems. And I started gravitating towards working with the other food makers. Like we would be selling someone's products in the store, and I would love having those discussions with them, trying to figure out how to help them scale their business or how to improve their products or things like that. So through that journey, I started thinking about, well, what's next after Meuwly's? And we'll talk about that in a moment.
So okay, so Meuwly's gets to a point where like you said, it's evolving, and it's kind of maybe the vision that you started with has changed over time. How does Beb's Bagels fit into that then? How did you get involved with that?
Well, I think from my perspective, the interconnectedness of a small food industry, like a small city's kind of food system, is a really special thing, and people get to know each other very quickly. And a mutual friend actually introduced me to Luke and Lyndon, who are the co-founders of Beb's Bagels. And at the time, it was late 2020. These two folks were touring musicians who were kind of locked up at home, right? There were no concerts happening. They couldn't really do what they did. So they were bored and just started making bagels for fun. They had spent time in Montreal, had really enjoyed the food culture there, had kind of fallen in love with that Montreal style chewy bagel, and they started making them at home. So I was introduced to them right when they were at that stage of debating, what do we want to do with this? Like, we're having fun. Should we just do this as a hobby, or should we turn it into a business? Now, one of them reminded me actually 2 days ago that I had a Zoom call with them when we first met. And I said, my piece of advice for you is don't open a food business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now 4.5 years later or so, here we are launching a location together. But we had a great conversation, and that turned into some ongoing mentorship, like on a peer-to-peer level, just helping them navigate their challenges and their growth. Then they actually started renting some kitchen space from me at Meuwly's. We had some extra capacity and they wanted a place to bake their bagels. And that led to me being a partner in the company a couple of years ago. So since then, we've had a lot of fun building it together. It's been kind of that pop-up model, available once a week, or special events, special menu launches around the city, things like that. But as of this week, we now have a location on Edmonton's White Ave, at least for the summer and potentially beyond.
Which I love. So that's what I'm really curious about, because I've been following you, stalking you via social media for the last while, because I have a little bit of FOMO, haven't been able to be in Edmonton for a couple of months. So in that time, you've done quite a bit. So as your vision for Meuwly's has evolved, and you started, working with other entrepreneurs, at one point you started, I think it's a Saturday morning, where you have, these really special sandwiches. A couple of your videos went viral. It really was something that really captured people. So maybe talk about what that kind of concept was, and how it kind of became what it became.
Yeah, like I think we all get into food because we enjoy it, we love it, we have fun creating new things for people to try. So on Saturdays, the bagel company was taking pre-orders. I'm a big believer in pre-orders in business. Like, if you can get someone's money a week before and get them to commit to that purchase, always do it. So we were taking pre-orders and selling bagels on Saturday mornings at Meuwly's, which is kind of my other business. And I'm always looking for synergies like that. How can I have these different entities support each other? But then we said, why don't we do sandwiches? Like, why don't we do some features so that people can try the bagel? Maybe someone just wanders in off the street and gets a bagel sandwich and they love it so much that they go home with a few bags of fresh bagels, right? So we've done a lot of different things over the years. Probably 2 or 3 years ago, we started dabbling in the smoked meat, like Montreal style smoked meat. We're starting to call it Edmonton smoked meat. We're doing it our own way, and we're not trying to replicate what's being done in Montreal or in New York, but putting our own spin on it. So we started experimenting with that, building recipes, testing things. And for the last year and a half, maybe, we've been doing that consistently every Saturday. And that all of a sudden took off. So a couple of viral videos. Suddenly, I think the first Saturday in June here, we usually open at 11. Someone had just gone upstairs at 10:55, to turn the lights on or something. And there was a line around the block. So
Nice.
People had lined up before we opened. And for about an hour straight, we had a line all the way up our stairs and around the corner, which has never happened in 7 years of business, right? So as an entrepreneur, you kind of learn that when the evidence is there, when you are seeing the signs that people love something, you need to lean into it. You need to go all in and figure out how to do more of that thing.
100%. So you try this. It's obviously wildly successful. So every Saturday, you have, the lineups. Obviously, people are sharing your passion, which is great. Is that what inspired you to create the hub, which is something you just opened?
Yes and no. The inspiration for the hub goes back probably almost 10 years. So my business partner, my co-owner of Meuwly's and the hub, His name is Glendon Tan. Long story, I actually know him because he used to do salsa dancing with my sister, competitive salsa dancing.
That's how you meet
If
people.
you look at me and you look at Glendon, I think both of these things would surprise you. But I got introduced to him probably 10 years ago, and he was a very entrepreneurial commercial landlord, building owner, property manager, and he was always looking for interesting things to put into his buildings. And, kind of took over the family business and slowly getting rid of the payday loan stores and putting in things that he wants to see in his own community. So we talked back in 2015 about building a restaurant incubator. And at that time, 2015, I would have been 24 years old. I had been cooking for 10 years, had never opened a food business, didn't necessarily know a lot about business. And I remember just thinking, like, there's imposter syndrome, and then there's, no, I'm an imposter. Like, I can't open a business incubator until I know a little bit about running a business. So we kept in touch. We kept discussing ideas, and eventually we opened Meuwly's started working on it in 2016. But that idea has always stuck with us. And over time, he has taken on more buildings. He has seen a revolving door of restaurant tenants, not just in his buildings, but in neighborhoods around our city. And it was so clear that people take their life savings, take on a ton of personal debt, personal guarantees at the bank, sign a 5-year lease or a 10-year lease, and then hope that something will work. Mm-hmm. And we know that most restaurants don't make it past 2 or 3 years. So I think time has shown us, and the experience of launching Meuwly's has shown us, that any kind of platform that supports food entrepreneurs is needed and a really special thing and worth investing our time into. So all of that backstory combined with this kind of current opportunity for Beb's Bagels to take a big step, mm-hmm. to expand and be in front of the community in a bigger way. It was the right place, the right time, and the right people to do this incubator concept that we've always believed in.
So the hub then, so the two things still exist, correct? So Meuwly's exists on 124th. You'll still have like the Saturday morning, that sort of experience. And then the hub being slightly different, where it's that incubator concept, like you said. So who is involved in the hub? So if you walk into it, what can one expect?
Yeah, great question. So right now, July 2025, we have a company called Ballet Coffee, which is a Filipino-inspired cafe. They've been running pop-ups since January. And most recently, they were doing some pop-ups at Meuwly's on 124th Street, but they were ready for that busier location. White Ave is the entertainment district of Edmonton. So they are in there serving coffee. I think they're going to be doing 5 days a week, possibly more as they grow. And then Beb's Bagels is in there 3 or 4 days a week for now, possibly more as we move forward. Mm-hmm. And we're just, very close to signing our third tenant. So I can't get into that too much yet, but we've had a lot of great conversations with people who want to be part of this. And we have space for about 4 at any given time.
Nice. So then as you progress, and maybe I'm too early with this question, but when you think about the hub, where do you see that vision, kind of like if you were to bring it to its kind of like full potential, where do you see that?
Yeah, like, if I won the lottery tomorrow, or if you won the lottery and we're feeling generous tomorrow, we would want multiple locations of this, and maybe each one has a different name, but we can fit 3 or 4 businesses at a time in this place. There are hundreds in a city like Edmonton at any given time, mm-hmm. who could benefit from this kind of a platform and location, right? So being partnered with a commercial landlord is a good way to do this. He's always looking for new opportunities. And having a few different locations in strategic areas of our community or in other communities, and being able to duplicate that playbook, right? Like, how do we get a place open? How do we find the right mix of entrepreneurs to be part of it, or the right mix of food concepts, mm-hmm. so that there's not too much overlap, but also there's mutual benefit. A cafe and a bagel spot makes perfect sense together. And then how can we add more value? So if we have Ballet Coffee taking part in this location, and they're gearing up to open their own brick and mortar and sign that 5-year lease, what does that ramp look like? Right? And how can we support them in bigger ways throughout that? Can we build relationships with some investors? Can we build relationships, with suppliers, where we're just making some of these things easier and gathering resources together to save the entrepreneur time and effort so that they can focus on what they do best.
Yeah, and I love that. One of the things, and you touched on it, is there's the risk that entrepreneurs take on is huge, but especially in the restaurant business and in the retail business, because like you said, the learning curve starts, but before they even get into that, they've committed themselves, right? And so many times, I think by the time they realize what they gotten themselves into, they're effectively chasing their tail. They can never quite get to where they need to be to bring it to the next level. And so they spend their entire time dealing with their lease, really just making enough money to get to the next month, and you're seeing burnout, and you're seeing a lot of stressed out, entrepreneurs who they're really passionate. They want to follow their vision, but instead of being able to do that, they're making decisions based on, okay, how can I make payroll? How can I pay my lease? I think with how you're describing this, you're almost pooling that knowledge base and saying, okay, here's what we've learned and here's what we can learn together. And we can kind of minimize the risk so that, the passion of why people are doing it can be more of a focus.
Absolutely. Let them spend their time making great coffee, baking delicious bagels, because we've got all the documents, we've got all the resources, we've got all the sort of technical side from trial and error that they can pull from. One of the things that you and I talk about a lot is the idea of making small bets, right? Making some calculated experiments and then learning quickly, adapting and implementing those results. I mean, I know you do that with your festivals. I know you do that with your media work. How can we trial something without kind of betting the farm on it, right?
Yeah.
And then move quickly once we've learned. And one of the challenges of opening your first restaurant is, if you can find a bank to lend you money for this, you're signing a personal guarantee. So when people get onto that hamster wheel, like they're 1.5 years into a 5-year lease and they're not paying themselves, I mean, at that point, they're trying to not lose their home. Right. I mean, I went through a little bit of this with Meuwly too. During the pandemic, I remortgaged my condo just to kind of keep everything going. And so then the desperation is not just about saving the business, but it's like saving the family's livelihood and the home and everything. And you cannot do your best creative work under that kind of stress and pressure. A little bit of stress is a great motivator, but it gets to a point where it's unhealthy. You're not sleeping properly, you're not eating properly. You're just not functioning well. So when you can make a smaller bet, do some experimenting, whether that's the pop-up model or, doing something online first and then doing it in person. In our case with the bagels, like taking pre-orders to sort of assess demand before we go buy $500 or $1,000 worth of ingredients to make bagels for a weekend. Like, let's see how many people are actually pre-ordering. This principle has worked really well for us. And that's what the hub is meant to do. It's meant to be this collaborative location where you can be there month to month, test out a new part of the city, bring in some money, right? Start to save some capital, start to bring in some equipment, build a customer base before you sign that long-term lease and, start getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses racking up.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I want to talk about you as an entrepreneur. So if you think back, was that something you always kind of knew you'd become, or is that something that you just realized one day? It's like, oh shit, I guess this is the life I've chosen.
My earliest memory is wanting to be a carpenter. So my dad is super handy. He's the kind of person who can just fix anything, figure anything out. Like we'd be driving down the highway and there'd be, some wooden pallets on the side of the road or something. You'd be like, oh, that'll be perfect to fix the shower at the cabin or whatever. My mom's dad, my grandfather, who I actually never met, he passed before I was born. He was a carpenter, and I still remember helping to clean out their garage as a little kid and seeing all the tools and all the stuff and the carpenter pencils and all these things. So I got really interested in that when I was 5, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I was 10, 11, 12, I had discovered cooking, and I was so focused on being a chef. And I had blinders on for like 10 years. I'm a chef. This is my identity. This is what I do. And it wasn't until my mid-20s when I started actually getting into the world of entrepreneurship that I put the two together, and I realized I like to build things, whether that's tangible or intangible. I like to create. Right. I like to be part of, conceptualizing, designing, testing, implementing, and learning from all that and doing it again. And so now when I'm also working with entrepreneurs, when I'm coaching people and helping them create their businesses, I'm trying to help people build their own careers, build their own dreams, and it's so rewarding. So I think that's the thread that brings it all together. I love food. I probably love eating it more than I love cooking it now. But I think the underlying passion for me was less about the ingredients or the nutrition or the culinary side, and more about that joy of creating.
Yeah, absolutely. As an entrepreneur, like when you look at, your career, what would you say, like, do you have a philosophy, or if you think back to like, what you thought of when you first started, creating businesses to how you approach it now? Curious if you have a philosophy, and if so, has that sort of consciously changed as you've went through the journey?
Yeah, I was not a competitive person when I was younger. I did not do really well in sports, not super athletic. But when I discovered cooking, I started doing cooking competitions. So high school, post-secondary, I've actually got to travel around the world doing cooking competitions. And I look back on like, why did I enjoy that? And I think it was coming from a deep personal value for growth and challenge and lifelong learning. So if there's something that kind of guides me as an entrepreneur on the internal focus, it's how can I ensure I'm always learning, always pushing myself, always, trying the next thing, whether that's a new business, a new partnership, a new product. I love the feeling of setting a goal, seems a little bit out of reach, and doing one step at a time until you get there. That's my internal focus. My external focus is like, how can I leave one little mark on the world, make it a better place? And whether that's making it easier for other entrepreneurs to build their dream, whether that's helping to create a more resilient food system, helping people in Edmonton and Canada take more pride in the things that we do here and the incredible culture that we have here. That's sort of my external focus. So when the two of those come together, like I said, I think I'm always seeking ways to create something for others, to recognize a problem and chase down a solution for it, or, find that thing that people love, even if it's as simple as a smoked meat bagel sandwich, and say, like, how do we do more of this? How do we bring this to the world? Right. There's an opportunity there. Let's figure out how to make it happen.
I love it. So you talk about, setting goals. So the thing with being an entrepreneur is we set goals. We don't always, get to our goal.
There's some moving targets. There's some
moving targets. Exactly. Yeah. Deadlines get lengthened. But failure is part of the process. Whether we like it or not, we're not going to bat 1,000 as entrepreneurs. So what is your relationship with failure, I'll say?
Failure and I see each other often. We get along. We get along well sometimes. I think every seasoned entrepreneur will tell you that failure is part of the journey. So I teach entrepreneurs. I teach an undergrad course here at the university, and whenever I bring in a guest speaker or a panel of founders, one of them will inevitably say, "You need to learn how to fail fast, learn from it, and move on." Mm-hmm. And then someone else will have also said, "Oh, well, one of the defining traits of an entrepreneur is that we're really resilient." So inevitably, a curious 20-something student puts up their hand and says, "Well, how do I know if it's a failure and I need to move on, or if I just need to be more resilient and push through because I'm almost at success?" And I think that is one of the true dilemmas, one of the, unsolvable questions of what we do is, sometimes you have to push through and sometimes you have to be willing to let go and move on. And it's hard to know. Mm-hmm. So what I have tried to define for myself is, how do I know if the current situation is not working because it's not the right thing? It's not aligned with my values or my life, or the community doesn't want it. The product market fit is not there. Those are situations where you have to accept that it's a failure, mm-hmm. and move on and learn from it. Or is this a situation where we're doing the right thing for the right people in the right way, and we're just not quite there yet? Mm-hmm. And in those situations, you have to keep pushing. You have to believe in yourself. You have to keep doing the work. And eventually you start to break through. And 7 years of operating a retail store before we had a lineup around the street. And the funniest part is we've been making that same sandwich for a year or more, right? Yeah. So the tipping point can come at any time. But those are different situations. And if you feel deep down like you're doing the right thing and the data looks promising, like there is objective evidence that people want what you're making and that the margins work and the business model can work, but it's not quite there yet, that sounds to me like you just have to keep pushing. You have to be resilient, right? Mm-hmm. But if something doesn't feel right, like if you're waking up every day and you no longer believe in the work that you're doing, or there is really no evidence, maybe you believe, but there's no evidence that people want this. You're running experiments and you're not getting results, and you're talking yourself into that belief that this is the right thing. It may be time to accept that version of your entrepreneurial journey is not going to work, but mm-hmm. the next thing will work better. So how can I learn from that? What can I take away? How can I adapt and make a stronger plan moving forward? Sometimes things fail truly because of external factors. Some amazing restaurants closed during the pandemic era because the customers were not able to go eat there. That doesn't mean that the founder did anything wrong. Mm-hmm. So that's a real dilemma. I'm sure you've experienced that too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's that, like I always say, being an entrepreneur is 50% listening and 50% ignoring, but figuring out what 50% to listen to and what 50% to ignore. That's the $1 million question. You mentioned that you teach entrepreneurship. I've often heard people say that you can learn a lot through teaching. So if you were to say, one or two things that you've really learned as an entrepreneur through the opportunity of teaching others, what would you say that has been?
There are very specific things. So I'll share one of those. Like when you coach founders, when you sort of guide them through that lean startup process, right? Like that technology business or software, anything like that. The number one lesson is go talk to people before you start building your product. Mm-hmm. Like go have conversations and ask everyone you can, how are you currently solving this problem? Is this a real thing that you need help with? Mm-hmm. Don't jump straight into, hey, I'm building an app that does X, Y, Z. Would you like that? Because everyone will just say, oh yeah, sure. Sounds great. You need to dig into and validate the underlying problem solution fit. And I have to say, when we started building our $1 million food manufacturing facility, we did not actually go out and actively validate the demand for what we were planning to make in Meuwly's. We just said, well, we've been chefs for 10 years and restaurants sell a lot of salami and people enjoy charcuterie boards. So we got a great business here. I mean, it has been a great business, but the size of the facility we built and the scope of everything that it can do is probably much bigger than a province like Alberta really needs. So there's one huge lesson, like reminding myself, I'm always telling people, go validate your idea, go have conversations, talk about this until you're red in the face to anyone who will listen, and have an open mind about the feedback you get. Don't just listen for the things that you want to hear. Listen to everything and interpret that and find the insights from all of those responses. That's a very direct thing. I think one of the I don't know, more intangible sort of big picture ideas that I have learned from teaching, from being surrounded by brilliant young students all the time, is this idea that you can really set your own path. It is never too late to change what you're doing. You are not tied down to anything. Like, I will meet people who are working on some kind of business idea and they've spent 3 years on it and they're, all in. And then a month before they graduate their undergrad degree, I see them in the hallway and they say, oh, you know what? I decided to go to law school. Like, after a lot of reflection, I realized, like, that's what I'm more excited about. And I think when people are in their early 20s, we tend to write off that kind of mindset. It's like, well, you have lots of time, so you can do whatever you want. The thing is, we all have a lot more time than we think in terms of career and what we spend our time on and how we live out our passions. And in the same way, we never know how much time is left. So why would you keep working on something that you don't believe in? Why would you keep dedicating your life to a path that no longer feels right? And so, as someone who started on my career path at 14 and just put my head down and did it for 10 years, telling myself, well, I'm a chef, that's what I do. I'm so glad that I sort of found this realization later on that if I ever find myself on a certain journey that starts to feel disconnected from my core values, from my sense of purpose, it's never too late to just switch it up. And you really can make your own circumstances in so many ways. Obviously, I say that as a person with some privilege here, but when I see the entrepreneurial energy and open-mindedness and optimism of my students, I try to hold on to a little bit of that mindset for myself and remember that we can chart our own path.
Absolutely. A couple of words that I was thinking of as you were describing that. One is, I think, a couple of things that get in the way oftentimes. One is obviously ego. We have a hard time, and I've been obviously guilty of this in my career as well. It's like, you don't want to admit that you're going down the wrong path. You want to just be like, no, like I know what this is going to be. And so you don't listen to yourself. You just kind of, your ego gets in the way. And the other is something you just mentioned, which is you define yourself as in a role. You say, well, I am a chef, or I am I talk to a lot of people who, ex-athletes who had a really hard time after they retired because they were defined by their role for so long, and now they don't know who they are. And I think if people can let go of, obviously, letting go of the ego is huge, but also letting go of, I am this, and just understand that you can play a role and you can have fun with it, but that should never define you as a person or as an entrepreneur. Do you agree with that?
I love that, Mark. I think that's very well said. If you ever want to do a little career coaching on the side, I think a lot of people need to be reminded of this.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Simon Sinek. I see all the books behind you. I know we talk about books all the time. Simon Sinek has a book and a famous video called Start With Why. And it's kind of like a marketing book. It's saying, how should a company define what they do? Or more importantly, why they do the things they do. But I actually think as entrepreneurs or as leaders in business and our communities, we need to remember that too. So I've tried to shift away from saying, I'm a chef, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. And I've tried to say, like, well, I have this sense of purpose, like my desire to create and build and learn and help people is what drives what I do. And so I'm always exploring opportunities or, ventures, partnerships where I can live out that purpose.
Yeah.
And, I've worked with some executive coaches in the past in different nonprofits or different organizations. And often you'll go through that exercise of writing your mission and vision. But I really think that defining yourself with a purpose, even if it's one word. So, for example, our Canadian Chefs Association, if I had to put a one-word purpose on that, it's gather. We need to gather the community together and support each other and things like that. And, I think mine would be to create, which would make a really great name for, I don't know, a book or maybe a podcast. Right?
I think so too. I really do. No, I think I love it. You mentioned a couple times that you started in the kitchen at 14. I just want to know why. Like, what was it that drew you to the kitchen at such a young age?
Yeah, aside from just like wanting to make a little bit of money, I know you were born in St. Albert as well. St. Albert, Alberta, beautiful backyard community. Not really great to be taking the bus around, it's very suburban. I wanted to save up and get a car. I wanted to be able to drive to West Edmonton Mall and, so there was kind of that teenage want to get a job drive. But for me, I do think it was deeper. I remember eating in restaurants, seeing in the open kitchen, all the chefs with their tall hats and, flames going around and all the noise and energy and hustle of the kitchen. It seemed very exciting. Then as I was old enough to help out a little bit at home and use the fancy chef's knives and, stir fry things in the wok and get some experience, I think I started to find my groove in the way that, someone like Wayne Gretzky will say, the first time I picked up a hockey stick, something felt right about it. And I think for me, it did feel like I connected to the movements and the hands-on aspect of being in the kitchen in a way that I wasn't super, like I didn't have great fine motor skills or athletic ability or the physicality and other things that I had tried. It just kind of clicked.
Right.
Watching cooking shows and seeing the role it played in our culture. I still remember asking my mom when I was 8 or 9, is being a chef a great job? And I still remember she kind of paused and she said, well, I think a lot of people would say that it's a very honorable job. I remember saying, I don't know if you'll make a lot of money. And I think it's probably hard work, but it's something that people really appreciate and really respect. And when you can cook for people, it's a very special thing. And I've really found a love of that hospitality. So maybe what I was originally drawn to was the flashiness of it, the Food Network side of it. And I think where I found my home is in that moment where you prepare some food for someone, whether it's really simple or really complex, it doesn't matter. You serve someone a plate of food and they take that first bite and you can watch their reaction and feel that, I made someone happy. I took care of them. I created something for them. That is a really special feeling. And I think, again, for me, that feeling has grown, whether I've prepared a charcuterie board or a smoked meat sandwich, or whether I've built a business that will help people in a completely different way. I'm watching for that reaction. I'm waiting to see, does this mean something to people? Do they love this? Do they appreciate this? Does this help them in some way? And that's a huge part of what keeps me going in this industry.
Love it. I couldn't help but notice you compared yourself to Gretzky, which is a little bit of a stretch. But I was just going to say, as a good St. Albert boy, you should have compared yourself to Messier.
Messier grew up behind my house. Like
Did he?
there is a walking path between our two backyards.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll get that in post-production.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned that you've been lucky enough to mentor people through the school and just, peer-to-peer mentoring. Um, do any people stand out in your life that have mentored you to kind of get you to where you are today, aside from myself?
Yeah. The past 3 years, it's all Mark Conrad.
Yeah.
I am so lucky, and I think about this often. It's I don't take this lightly. How much mentorship from other people has contributed to my journey, to my life. If I ever find myself as successful as a hockey player, it will be because of the people who kind of put me on skates, right? So obviously, starting with the family, and my parents were incredibly supportive of me wanting to be a chef, despite being a very academic student. Like all my teachers were saying, "Oh, you're going to go to university, right?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to work at Boston Pizza and go to culinary school and do this and that." My parents supported that 100%, which was really special. But as I got into high school, the culinary teacher at my high school, his name is Randy Kozak. I'll send him this and force him to listen to it. He got me into cooking competitions, but more importantly, he taught me that you can achieve whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
His line, what he would always say is, you get out what you put into it. So, Pete, if you want to be the one practicing for this competition 4 or 5 days a week, because it means that much to you, you will see results from that. And the students who don't choose to put in that effort will not see those kind of results. And that lesson, like, again, as someone who didn't play a lot of sports, that's where I really learned that life lesson. I learned about commitment. I learned about hard work. And when we got into opening my first venture with my business partners, I had to tell myself, I may not have the most experience. I may not have the most business knowledge. I'm definitely not a highly skilled chef, but I can ensure that no one else can outwork me.
Right.
I can ensure that whatever I do, it might fail, but it won't fail because I didn't give it my all.
Yeah.
And I think I learned that honestly in high school from people like Randy. And then one other area of my life, this idea of being part of the community and giving back and looking to contribute and create more than you take away from a community. Looking at my time at NAIT in culinary school, some of my instructors there, the program chair, his name was Stanley Townsend, and one of his colleagues who was the chef at Edmonton's Convention Center for many years. His name was Simon Smokovich. The two of them actually built a scholarship program for high school students who wanted to become chefs. And it starts with a cooking competition in February. And then in April, they give out 3 scholarships for a full ride, all your tuition, all your textbooks, all your tools, uniforms, everything. So I received that scholarship in 2009, and that completely changed my life. It set me on a path. It connected me to people. It got me job placements that really impacted everything. And so I'm incredibly proud. Actually, this spring, as part of the now organizing team of that organization, of that scholarship, we were actually able to name a scholarship after each of those gentlemen. And so now every year in perpetuity, a young Edmonton area student will receive the Simon Smokovich Scholarship and the Stanley Townsend Scholarship. So I think they, as mentors, they taught me a lot about cooking and a lot about business and work and life, but really instilled in me the value of being part of a community, being part of something bigger than yourself, and the responsibilities that come with that. So the people around you will do a lot to help you succeed and to help your career and help you navigate life. And you need to do the same. And I think most importantly, I learned that you can start now. Becoming a mentor doesn't have to wait until you're Wayne Gretzky. I'm like, maybe I'm the guy who was like drafted in the last round and might never see an NHL game, but you have something to teach and people have something to learn from you. And if you are willing to give your time and energy, everyone around will benefit in some way. So really grateful to these mentors for helping me learn all of these life lessons and really they're still active supporters of me today.
Nice. So you mentioned community, and I wanted to ask you about that, but maybe in a different context, which is, if you think about yourself being a chef in Edmonton versus Vancouver versus Calgary, Toronto, whatever, each of those communities is going to shape you in a way. And so you're going to become a unique person based on the community that you're working in. For you, how has being a chef in Edmonton shaped you?
I think Edmonton is the biggest small town in Canada. We're a city of over 1 million people. We're the provincial capital. Got a really great mall. We're a big city, but the culture here has a small town community feel in many ways. I was actually recently talking to someone else about this. When I compare Edmonton to Calgary, Calgary is a fun city. Like, it's incredible. You have Stampede going right now. There's so much energy. And the restaurant scene is really special. When you walk into a new Calgary restaurant, you can look at it and say, whoa, this place took some money to get built. Mm-hmm. Like, there's some backing here. And typically when you walk into a new Edmonton restaurant, you're like, oh, I think the chef painted this place themselves. Yeah. And that's very true for the hub. Like, I painted the walls. It's not perfect. Edmonton has this kind of scrappy, middle child. Like, we're not a Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, but we're also a city of 1 million people. And we have this kind of do-it-yourself attitude, this hustle, hustle for your own purposes, not sort of working for someone else. So it is very entrepreneurial. It is very creative. The art scene is incredible. And I think all of that lends itself to people like Glendon and I, people like Luke and Lyndon from Bev's Bagels, the folks from Ballet Coffee. Edmontonians recognize that work. They recognize the risk that's being taken, and they come out to support these small, scrappy, do-it-yourself restaurants and cafes, not despite the flaws or the lack of a fancy exterior, but because of it. Mm-hmm. They come out and support because it feels like it was built by real people. Mm-hmm. It feels like there are your neighbors and your friends running these things, building these things, creating these things, as opposed to some faceless holding company that, has a really, really great interior designer, but doesn't necessarily give you the same, that kind of hometown feel to it.
Right.
And I think that that's something that is very special about Edmonton. Don't get me wrong. I hate the winters here. If I ever leave, it will be because of that. But we are a really special community in so many ways. And I know we couldn't have opened the businesses that we've opened in a bigger city. Like, we could not afford the rent in Vancouver or Toronto to have a 5,000 square foot cured meat facility in the downtown core. There's no way.
Right. Yeah. And how does that then reflect in the food in Edmonton? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is that why, like a smoked meat sandwich resonates with people? Like, does it come down to just exactly like granular to that degree, do you think?
So one of the first chefs that I worked for, his name was Willie White, incredibly talented chef. And he did a lot of work with Fairmont Hotels. So he understood luxury, he understood fine dining, but in his restaurant, he did not put tablecloths on the table. And, he said to me, the people who are coming to eat here, they're leaving their downtown office jobs and they're coming home and they want to feel comfortable. They want to feel at ease. They want to feel like they're among friends. They don't want a stuffy place with a starched tablecloth. And I've really seen that in Edmonton overall. So I think the vibe that people are trying to create is a little different. We recognize that we're a northern city. I mean, we're the largest northern city in North America. We can't get all the beautiful, fresh ingredients that you can get in Calgary or in Vancouver. I was joking with a hotel chef here who said it's actually like it was easier being on a remote island in the Bahamas where everything had to be ordered to come in by boat because you could still get more ingredients there. There are challenges that limit the food that is being created here, but I think we sort of embrace that and we look for things that are uniquely ours.
Yeah.
We have got to be one of the donair capitals of the world. We're home of the green onion cake. I mean, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We love our comfort food. We love things that have that sense of place, that feel like home, that tell the story of the people who made it, right? So I think those are things that are very special about a city like Edmonton.
I love it. Okay, so one random question, then I'll let you get back to work. What I love about talking with chefs is they always have something super random as a guilty pleasure. So, you talk about, making amazing food and, but after a long shift and you're just tired and you want to go home, what are you eating at 2 a.m. on your way home?
Well, I don't need to give too much free publicity to a certain fast food conglomerate with a golden shaped letter as their logo. I love indulgent food. I love salty food, but I think that I also really love sweet food. So what you'll often find is, like, if I'm stopping to get gas or something, I'll get, the jumbo size Reese cups, or lately the O. Henry bar that has the Reese peanut butter in it. So, I mean, every time I come down to Calgary and I see you at the beer festivals, or every time we meet up in Jasper, if you go check my car, there's going to be at least 2 empty wrappers in there of some kind of chocolate peanut butter combo. When I was painting the restaurant over the last few weeks, I loaded up on some of those snacks. So yeah, we all have our guilty pleasures, and sweet treats are mine.
I love it, man. So what's next for you? What's kind of obviously the hub is taking up all of your time. Any more projects in the works as you kind of you're always plotting, it seems to me.
Yeah, well, this summer was meant to be all about our charcuterie carts, our mobile bar cart where we can build charcuterie and cheese boards to order for people. So we're doing golf tournaments, we're doing weddings. I've probably neglected that a little bit over the last few weeks. I think what's really next for me is building systems and trying to ensure that everything can run without me. Mm-hmm. As an entrepreneur. That's part of our job, right? If you build a business that can't run a few days without you there, you've actually just bought yourself a very expensive job. So trying to create some structure, create some systems. We're hiring a few people that will allow me to step back out of those things a little bit. That's priority number one. And then we're going to be listening and learning. How is the hub working for the food entrepreneurs who are in there? How can we improve it? And if it goes really well, starting to look for another location.
Right on, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I love anytime we get to talk. Like I said, anytime we're hanging out, I can always kind of see you kind of observing. And so I know that there's always something next kind of thing. So hopefully we have many more of these conversations, but hopefully before the summer is over, I get up to Edmonton to try one of your sandwiches and hang out on a patio and have a beer.
Sounds great, Mark. I look forward to it.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to the Create Podcast. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you next Wednesday.